The blood on her hands was still warm when she heard the horses coming up the canyon road, their hooves striking stone in a rhythm that matched the frantic beating of her heart. Sarah Owens pressed herself against the kitchen wall of the ranch house, listening as the riders drew closer through the darkness. It was midnight, and she had been alone for 3 hours since the shooting. The body of Jake Mallory lay sprawled in the dirt behind the barn where he had fallen, a hole through his chest from the derringer she kept hidden in her apron pocket. He had tried to force himself on her after following her home from town, drunk and mean, and she had done what any woman would do to survive. But that would not matter to his brothers. The Mallorys ran most of Breckenridge, Colorado, and they did not forgive. She was 22 years old and had been running her late father's ranch alone for 8 months, since consumption took him in the winter of 1878. The land was not much, just 40 acres of rocky terrain at the base of the mountains, but it was hers, and she had fought to keep it when every man in town told her to sell and move back east where women belonged. Now she might die for that stubbornness. The horses stopped at the gate. She heard the creak of leather as men dismounted, heard their boots hitting the ground. 3 sets of boots. Jake's 2 older brothers and probably their cousin. They would not come with the law because the law would ask questions they did not want to answer. They would come for revenge, pure and simple. Sarah grabbed her father's rifle from above the fireplace, checked that it was loaded, and moved toward the front door. Her hands shook, but her mind was clear. She would not go down without a fight. She would not let them take her. She had just reached for the door handle when it swung open from the outside, and she stumbled back, raising the rifle. But the man who stepped through was not a Mallory. He was tall and lean, wearing a dusty brown coat and a wide-brimmed hat that shadowed his face. He moved with the easy grace of someone who had spent his whole life in the saddle, and when he turned to look at her, she saw eyes the color of a summer sky before a storm. "Madam," he said quietly, holding up his hands to show they were empty. "I am not here to hurt you. My name is Isaac Walker. I was bedding down in your barn for the night when I heard riders coming. Saw 3 men at your gate and they did not look friendly." "You need to leave," Sarah said, her voice steadier than she felt. "This is not your fight." "Any fight that involves 3 armed men coming to a woman's home in the middle of the night is everybody's fight," Isaac said. He glanced out the window, then back at her. "Those Mallory boys," she nodded, surprised he knew them. He smiled grimly. "Figured. I have had dealings with that family before, none of them good." He moved to the window and peered out through the curtain. "They are talking at the gate, trying to decide how to approach. We have maybe 2 minutes. Sarah said. "I told you this is not your concern. I can handle this myself." Isaac turned to face her fully, and in the lamplight she could see he was younger than she had first thought, maybe 25 or 26, with a strong jaw and a faint scar running along his left cheekbone. "Madam, I mean no disrespect, but you cannot handle 3 armed men alone. I am offering to help. You can accept that help or you can die stubborn. Your choice." The bluntness of his words struck her like cold water. She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him she had been taking care of herself just fine, but the truth was she was terrified. She had killed 1 man tonight in self-defense, but she did not know if she could kill 3 more. And even if she could, even if she somehow survived, she would be hunted for the rest of her life. "Why would you risk yourself for a stranger?" she asked. Isaac's expression softened slightly. "Let us just say I know what it is like to be on the wrong side of powerful men, and I do not like bullies." He glanced out the window again. "They are moving. Make your choice." Sarah took a breath and lowered her rifle slightly. "What do you suggest?" "Give me that," Isaac said, gesturing to her rifle. "You go upstairs, get out of sight. If shooting starts, you stay down until I say otherwise." "Understood." She wanted to argue, but there was something about his calm authority that made her trust him despite herself. She handed him the rifle and he checked it expertly, then moved to the front door. "Upstairs," he repeated. "Now." Sarah hurried up the narrow staircase to the second floor just as she heard boots on the porch. She crouched at the top of the stairs, peering down through the railings, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. Isaac stepped out onto the porch. Through the window she could see him silhouetted against the night, the rifle held loosely in his hands. She heard the metallic click as he cocked it, the sound sharp and final in the darkness. "That is far enough," Isaac called out. His voice carried easily across the yard. "State your business." There was a moment of silence, then a rough voice answered. "We are looking for Sarah Owens." "We know she is in there." "Miss Owens is not receiving visitors at this hour," Isaac said. "Come back in the morning." "This does not concern you, stranger. Step aside or you will regret it." "I regret plenty of things," Isaac said, "but helping a woman in trouble is not going to be one of them. Now I suggest you boys turn around and ride back to town. Sleep this off. Whatever you think happened tonight, it can wait until daylight." "Our brother is dead," another voice snarled. "That murdering woman shot him." "Did she now?" Isaac said, his tone neutral. "And why would she do a thing like that? She is a liar and a killer. We are here for justice." "Justice," Isaac repeated. "That is a mighty big word. Does it include the part where your brother tried to force himself on her? Because I am guessing that is what really happened." "You calling our brother a rapist?" "I am calling things what they are," Isaac said. "Your brother came here drunk and mean and Miss Owens defended herself. That is not murder. That is survival. Now the three of you can accept that and leave, or you can try to come through me. Fair warning, though, I am a better shot than I look, and I have got a clear view of all three of you standing there like targets at a shooting gallery." Sarah held her breath. She could see the three Mallory men now in the yard, shadows against the starlight. The eldest brother, Marcus, stood in the center, his hand hovering near his gun. To his left was his younger brother Cole, and to the right was their cousin Finn. All three were armed, all three were dangerous. 3 against 1, Marcus said. "You like those odds?" "I have faced worse," Isaac said, "but you are missing the point. This does not have to end in blood. You boys can walk away, live to see tomorrow. Maybe even learn something about honor along the way." "Honor," Marcus spat. "You do not know who you are dealing with, stranger." "The Mallory name means something in this territory. It means you are bullies who hide behind your father's money and influence," Isaac said. "I have dealt with your type before. You are all bluster until someone stands up to you. Then you fold faster than a bad poker hand." Sarah saw Marcus's hand drop to his gun, saw Isaac's finger move to the trigger of the rifle. Time seemed to slow, every second stretching out like taffy. She wanted to call out to stop this before it started, but her voice caught in her throat. Then a new voice spoke from the darkness beyond the gate. "Marcus Mallory, stand down." Everyone froze. A man on horseback emerged from the shadows, riding slowly toward the house. Sarah recognized him immediately, Sheriff Tom Brennan, a grizzled veteran of the Union Army who ran Breckenridge with a fair but firm hand. He was one of the few men in town who had treated her with respect after her father died. "Sheriff," Marcus said, his voice tight, "this is family business." "It became my business when you three saddled up with guns in the middle of the night," Brennan said. He reined his horse between the Mallorys and the porch, his own rifle resting across his saddle. "I heard about Jake. Heard the whole story, too, from Doc Reynolds. Jake came into the saloon tonight bragging about how he was going to teach that uppity Owens woman a lesson. Half the town heard him. The other half heard the shot from out here and saw him ride this way. That does not mean she had the right to kill him, Cole protested. It means exactly that, Brennan said. A man forces himself on a woman. She has every right under the law to defend herself. You want to argue that point, we can do it in front of Judge Harrison tomorrow morning. But somehow I do not think you boys want the details of your brother's death made public in a courtroom. Marcus's jaw worked, his fists clenching and unclenching at his sides. Sarah could see the war raging inside him, pride battling against practicality. Finally, he turned and spat in the dirt. "This is not over," he said. "Yes, it is," Brennan said firmly. "Jake Mallory is dead by his own actions. There will be no charges against Miss Owens, no investigation, and no revenge. You three go home. I see any of you near this property again without invitation, I will arrest you for trespassing and attempted assault. That clear?" The three men stood in rigid silence for a long moment, then Marcus turned and stalked back to his horse. Cole and Finn followed, and within seconds they had mounted and were riding back down the canyon road, their horses kicking up dust that glowed silver in the moonlight. Brennan watched them go, then turned to Isaac, who had finally lowered the rifle. "You are Isaac Walker. Heard you were passing through." "News travels fast," Isaac said. "This is a small town," Brennan said. "We notice strangers, especially ones with reputations." He glanced up at the window where Sarah crouched. "You can come down now, Miss Owens. They are gone." Sarah stood on shaking legs and made her way downstairs. When she stepped out onto the porch, the cool night air hit her face and she realized she was covered in sweat. "Thank you, Sheriff," she said. "I do not know what would have happened if you had not come." "Thank this young man," Brennan said, nodding toward Isaac. "His rifle shot woke me up. I was sleeping in the boarding house and heard the commotion. By the time I got dressed and followed the Mallorys out here, he already had them at bay." He studied Isaac with sharp eyes. "You have got a steady hand and nerves of steel. Where did you learn to handle men like that, here and there?" Isaac said vaguely. "I have moved around a lot." Brennan grunted. "Well, Miss Owens is lucky you chose to bed down in her barn tonight. Though I suspect that was not entirely coincidence." Before Isaac could respond, the sheriff tipped his hat to Sarah. "You will need to come into town tomorrow and make a formal statement, but based on what I already know, this will be ruled self-defense. Jake Mallory brought this on himself." "What about his body?" Sarah asked quietly. "I will send the undertaker out in the morning. For now, try to get some rest." Brennan turned his horse and rode back toward town, leaving Sarah and Isaac alone in the sudden silence. Sarah became aware of how close they were standing, could smell the leather and sage scent of him, could see the faint stubble on his jaw. "You did not have to do that," she said. "You could have just left when you heard them coming." "I could have," Isaac agreed, "but I did not." He handed her back her rifle. "You should keep this loaded and close by. The sheriff ran them off tonight, but men like that hold grudges." "I know." Sarah took the rifle, her fingers brushing against his. The contact sent a jolt through her that had nothing to do with fear. "Will you at least let me make you breakfast in the morning? It is the least I can do." Isaac hesitated, and she saw something flicker in his eyes, some emotion she could not quite read. Then he nodded. "Breakfast sounds good, but then I should be moving on. I do not stay in one place long." "Running from something?" Sarah asked before she could stop herself. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Everyone in the West is running from something, Miss Owens. Some of us are just faster than others." He touched the brim of his hat. "Try to sleep. I will be in the barn if you need anything." Sarah watched him walk across the yard, his long stride eating up the distance. When he disappeared into the barn, she finally went back inside and locked the door. But sleep did not come easily that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Jake Mallory's face. saw the blood spreading across his shirt. And when she finally did drift off near dawn, she dreamed of storm blue eyes and a stranger's steady hands on a rifle. The sun was just breaking over the mountains when Sarah woke. Her body ached from tension and lack of sleep, but she forced herself out of bed and dressed quickly in a simple cotton dress. She built up the fire in the kitchen stove and started making coffee, then began preparing breakfast. Eggs from her chickens, bacon from the smokehouse, biscuits she had made the day before. It was more than she usually ate alone, but she found herself wanting to impress Isaac Walker, this mysterious stranger who had risked his life for her. She was just finishing when she heard boots on the porch. Isaac appeared in the doorway, hat in hand, looking slightly uncomfortable. "Morning, Miss Owens." "Sarah," she corrected, gesturing to the table. "Please sit, and thank you again for last night." Isaac sat, looking around the small but tidy kitchen. "You have got a nice place here." "Keeping it running alone must be hard work." "It is," Sarah admitted, pouring coffee for both of them. "But it is mine. My father built this ranch from nothing. I am not going to let it go without a fight." She set a plate in front of him, and he dug in with the focused attention of a man who had missed too many meals. They ate in companionable silence for a few minutes before Sarah gathered her courage. "Sheriff Brennan said you have a reputation." "What kind of reputation?" Isaac looked up from his plate, studying her face. "The kind that makes some people nervous and others feel safe. I have worked as a lawman, a scout, a hired gun when the cause was just. I do not rob or kill for money, if that is what you are asking." "But you have killed." "Yes." His answer was simple, direct, without shame or pride. Always men who needed killing, men who hurt the innocent or took what was not theirs. The West is not a forgiving place, Sarah. Sometimes violence is the only language that gets through. She thought about Jake Mallory lying dead behind her barn and nodded slowly. "I killed a man last night. I keep waiting to feel guilty about it, but I do not. Is that wrong?" "No," Isaac said firmly. "You did what you had to do to survive. There is no shame in that." He took a sip of coffee. "This is good, best I have had in months." "Where are you headed?" Sarah asked. "Or is that something else you do not talk about?" Isaac smiled, and it transformed his whole face, made him look younger and less haunted. "I was heading south toward New Mexico. I have got some old friends down there who might have work, but I am flexible." "You said you do not stay in one place long. Why?" He was quiet for a long moment, his fingers tracing the rim of his coffee cup. "My father was a Texas Ranger," he said finally. "Good man, honest, dedicated to justice. When I was 18, he arrested a powerful rancher named Clayton Pierce for murder. Had solid evidence, witnesses, everything. But Pierce had money and connections. He walked free, and 2 weeks later my father turned up dead in a ditch outside San Antonio. They called it an accident. I called it murder." Sarah felt her throat tighten. "I am sorry. I tried to prove Pierce did it, but I was just a kid with no evidence and no one would listen. So I tracked down the men Pierce hired to do the job. Took me 3 years, but I found them all, made them confess. Then I turned them over to the law." His jaw tightened. "Pierce had already died of a heart attack by then, so he never faced justice. But his hired killers did. They hanged. And you have been drifting ever since." "Something like that. I could not stay in Texas after that. Too many memories. Too many people who looked at me and saw a vigilante instead of a man trying to do right. So I moved on, helped people where I could, tried to make up for what I could not save." Sarah reached across the table and covered his hand with hers. "You saved me last night. That has to count for something." Isaac looked at their joined hands, then up at her face. Whatever he saw there made something shift in his expression. "Maybe," he said softly. "Maybe it does." They were still sitting like that when they heard the wagon approaching. Sarah pulled her hand back quickly and stood, looking out the window. "It is the undertaker, and Sheriff Brennan." Isaac stood as well, settling his hat back on his head. "I will go help them with the body. You should not have to see that again." She nodded gratefully, and he slipped out the back door. Sarah watched through the window as he met the undertaker and sheriff at the barn, saw them disappear around the corner where Jake's body lay. She busied herself cleaning up breakfast, trying not to think about what they were doing, trying not to remember the look on Jake's face when he fell. When Brennan came to the house 20 minutes later, his expression was grave but not unkind. "I need you to tell me exactly what happened last night, from the beginning." Sarah did, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. She told him how Jake had followed her home from town, how he had been drinking at the saloon and making crude comments, how he had cornered her outside the barn and tried to force her inside, how she had pulled the derringer and warned him to stop, how he had laughed and grabbed her anyway, and how the gun had gone off when she pulled the trigger in pure panic. Brennan wrote it all down in his notebook, asking occasional questions but mostly just letting her talk. When she finished, he closed the book and looked at her with something like pity. "That matches what witnesses in town told me about Jake's behavior. And Doc Reynolds confirmed the angle of the bullet wound is consistent with your story. This will be ruled self-defense. You are not in any legal trouble." "But I am in other kinds of trouble," Sarah said. "The Mallorys will not forget this." "No, they probably will not," Brennan admitted. "Marcus especially. He's got a mean streak and a long memory. You should consider leaving Breckenridge for a while. Let things cool down." "This is my home," Sarah said stubbornly. "I am not running," Brennan sighed. "I admire your spirit, but stubbornness can get you killed out here. Just think about it." He glanced out the window to where Isaac was helping the undertaker load Jake's body into the wagon. "That Walker boy, he is planning to move on." He said he was heading south. "Might be good if he stayed around for a while," Brennan said carefully. "Man like that could be useful if the Mallorys try anything else, and you could use some help running this place." "I barely know him," Sarah protested. "You know he stood between you and 3 armed men last night. You know he has got courage and a steady hand." "That is more than you know about most folks when you first meet them." Brennan stood and settled his hat on his head. "Just a suggestion, but you might want to consider it." After he left, Sarah stood in her kitchen feeling the weight of everything that had happened pressing down on her shoulders. She had killed a man. She had been saved by a stranger. Her life had changed irrevocably in the space of a few hours, and she had no idea what came next. She went outside and found Isaac washing his hands at the pump. He looked up as she approached, water dripping from his face. "They took him," he said unnecessarily. "You all right? The sheriff says I should leave town for a while, let things settle." "That is probably smart advice. He also suggested you should stay and help me run the ranch." Isaac went still, his hands frozen mid-motion. "Did he now?" "I know you said you do not stay in one place, and I know you do not owe me anything more than you have already given, but he is right. I could use help, and the Mallorys might try something else." She took a breath. "I can pay you not much but room and board and a little cash. Just until things settle down. A few weeks maybe." Isaac dried his hand slowly on his bandana, his expression unreadable. Sarah felt her face heating. This was a mistake. He was going to say no, and she was going to feel like a fool for asking. Then he nodded. "A few weeks. Until you are safe and settled, then I move on." Relief flooded through her so powerfully it made her dizzy. "Thank you, really. I know this is not what you planned." "Plans change," Isaac said. He looked around the ranch with an assessing eye. "Your barn needs some repairs. And that fence line is sagging. I can start there if you like." "I would appreciate that." Sarah found herself smiling despite everything. "I will make up the spare room for you. It is not much, but it is better than the barn." Isaac shook his head. "The barn is fine, I am used to it. And it is probably better if I stay out there anyway. For your reputation." Sarah had not thought about that, but he was right. A single woman living alone with a single man would cause talk in a town the size of Breckenridge, especially after what had just happened with Jake Mallory. "The barn it is then. But you take your meals with me. I insist." "Yes, madam," Isaac said with a slight smile, and something warm unfurled in Sarah's chest at the sight of it. The days that followed fell into a rhythm that felt both strange and natural. Isaac worked on the ranch from sunup to sundown, repairing fences, fixing the barn roof, tending to the handful of cattle Sarah owned. He had a way with animals that amazed her, could calm a spooked horse with just his voice, could handle the meanest bull without breaking a sweat. He was also a skilled carpenter and blacksmith, able to fix things she had been struggling with for months. They ate breakfast and dinner together, and slowly Sarah learned more about this quiet, complex man who had appeared in her life. He had been born in Texas, but had lived all over the territories. He could speak some Spanish and a bit of Ute, picked up from his travels. He loved reading when he could get his hands on books, and she found herself loaning him volumes from her father's small collection. He would read at night in the barn by lamplight, and sometimes she would see the glow and feel comforted knowing he was there. They talked about everything and nothing. He told her stories about his travels, about the people he had met and places he had seen. She told him about growing up on the ranch, about her mother who had died when she was 12, about her father's dreams for the land. Isaac listened with genuine interest, asked questions, remembered details. It had been so long since anyone had really listened to her that Sarah found herself opening up in ways she had not expected. And slowly, carefully, something shifted between them. It started with small things. The way Isaac's hand would linger when he helped her down from the wagon. The way Sarah found herself watching him work, admiring the strength in his shoulders and the competent way he handled every task. The way their eyes would meet across the dinner table and hold just a moment too long. 2 weeks after the shooting, Sarah was in the kitchen garden picking tomatoes when she heard riders approaching. Her heart jumped into her throat, and she grabbed the rifle she now kept close at all times. But when she looked up, she saw it was just old Mr. Henderson and his wife from the neighboring ranch, come to check on her. "Sarah, dear," Mrs. Henderson called, climbing down from the wagon with her husband's help. "We heard about what happened with Jake Mallory. We wanted to make sure you were all right." "I am fine," Sarah said, though she kept the rifle in her hands. "Thank you for coming." "We brought you some preserves and fresh bread," Mrs. Henderson said, handing over a basket, "and we wanted to meet this young man who is helping you." She looked around expectantly. "The one everyone in town is talking about." Sarah felt her face heat. "Isaac is around somewhere, probably in the south pasture." "We will wait," Mr. Henderson said, and there was something in his tone that made Sarah realize this was not entirely a social call. They wanted to vet Isaac, make sure he was trustworthy. It was sweet in a way, but also intrusive. They found Isaac mending a section of fence. He looked up as they approached, his expression polite but guarded. Sarah made the introductions and watched as Mr. Henderson sized Isaac up with the shrewd eye of a man who had lived in the West for 40 years. "So you are the one who stood up to the Mallorys," Henderson said. "I helped Miss Owens when she needed it," Isaac said neutrally. "Nothing more than anyone should have done, but you were the one who did it." Henderson extended his hand. "That takes courage or foolishness. I have not decided which yet." Isaac shook his hand firmly. "Probably a bit of both, sir." They talked for a few more minutes, Henderson asking subtle but pointed questions about Isaac's background and plans. Isaac answered honestly, but without giving too much away, and Sarah could see Henderson's respect growing. Finally, the old rancher nodded. "You are welcome at our place anytime, Walker. And Sarah, if you need anything, you send word. We look after our own out here." After they left, Sarah walked back to the house with Isaac beside her. "That was the Henderson seal of approval," she said. "It means something in this valley." "They care about you," Isaac said. "That is good. You need people looking out for you." "I have you," Sarah said without thinking, then felt her face flush hot. "I mean for now, while you are here." Isaac stopped walking and turned to face her. They were standing in the shadow of the house, close enough that Sarah could see the gold flecks in his blue eyes. "Sarah," he said quietly, "you know I am going to leave eventually, when things settle down and you are safe." "I know," she said, though the words hurt more than she wanted to admit. "You made that clear from the start. I just do not want you to think." He trailed off, seeming to struggle for words. "I do not want to hurt you. You have been through enough." "Then do not hurt me," Sarah said boldly. "Stay, not just for a few weeks. Stay and help me run this ranch. We work well together. You know we do." Isaac's expression was torn, anguished. "It is not that simple." "Why not? What are you running from that is so terrible you can never stop?" "I am not running from anything," he said. "I am just not built for staying. I never have been. Every place I have tried to settle, something goes wrong. People get hurt or things fall apart. It is better if I keep moving." "That is fear talking," Sarah said, "not logic. You are afraid if you let yourself care about something, you will lose it like you lost your father." The words hung between them, sharp and true. Isaac's jaw tightened, and for a moment she thought he might walk away. Instead he said, "Maybe you are right, but that does not change anything." He turned and headed back toward the south pasture, leaving Sarah standing alone with her heart hammering and tears threatening to fall. She wanted to call after him, to argue more, but what was the point? She could not force him to stay. She could not make him feel something he did not want to feel, but she knew, bone deep, that he did feel it. She saw it in the way he looked at her when he thought she was not watching, felt it in the careful distance he maintained, as if getting too close would break something precious. Isaac Walker was falling for her just as surely as she was falling for him, and he was fighting it with everything he had. That night, Sarah could not sleep. She lay in bed listening to the wind in the pines and thinking about Isaac in the barn. Finally, near midnight, she gave up and went downstairs to make tea. She was sitting at the kitchen table in her nightgown and robe when she heard a sound outside. Her hand went immediately to the rifle propped against the wall, her whole body going tense. But it was just Isaac appearing in the doorway like a ghost. "I saw your light," he said. "Could not sleep either. Too much thinking," Sarah admitted. She gestured to the teapot. "Want some?" He nodded and sat down across from her. She poured him a cup and they sat in silence for a long moment. Finally, Isaac said, "I am sorry about earlier. I should not have walked away like that. You were honest. I appreciate that even if I do not like what you said." "The thing is," Isaac continued, staring into his tea, "you are right about the fear. After my father died, I spent 3 years hunting his killers. 3 years where nothing mattered but revenge. When it was over, I did not know who I was anymore. So I drifted, helped people where I could, but never stayed long enough to put down roots. Never let myself want anything permanent because wanting leads to losing." "Not always," Sarah said softly, "often enough." He looked up at her. "But then I met you, and for the first time in years I have found myself wanting to stay, wanting to see what might happen if I stopped running. And that terrifies me." Sarah's heart was pounding so hard she could barely breathe. "Why does it terrify you?" "Because I do not want to fail you. I do not want to be one more person who lets you down or leaves you alone. You deserve better than a drifter with a dark past and no future." "Let me decide what I deserve," Sarah said. She reached across the table and took his hand. His skin was warm and calloused against hers. "I am not asking you to promise me forever, Isaac. I am just asking you to stay long enough to see what this could be. Can you do that?" Isaac's fingers tightened around hers. "I can try. That is all I am asking." They sat like that for a long time, hands joined across the table, something fragile and precious building between them. Finally, Isaac stood, pulling her up with him. They were standing very close, and Sarah could feel the warmth radiating from his body, could smell the scent of hay and leather that clung to him. "I should go," Isaac said, but he did not move. "You should," Sarah agreed, but she did not step back. Isaac raised his free hand and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered on her cheek, and Sarah felt herself leaning into the touch. "You are beautiful," he said quietly. "I should have told you that before. You can tell me now." He smiled, that rare, full smile that transformed his face. Then, slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he leaned down and kissed her. It was soft and sweet and full of barely restrained longing, and Sarah felt herself melting into it. Her hands came up to rest on his chest, feeling his heart racing beneath her palms. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. "Sarah," Isaac said, his voice rough, if we try this, you need to understand that I am broken in ways I cannot always explain. I have nightmares. I have days where the past catches up with me. I am not an easy man to love." "I am not looking for easy," Sarah said. "I am looking for real, and this feels real to me." Isaac kissed her again, deeper this time, and Sarah felt the last of his resistance crumbling. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "I will stay," he said. "Not just for a few weeks. I will stay and we will figure this out together, if you will have me." "I will have you," Sarah said, and sealed it with another kiss. The next few weeks passed in a haze of work and growing affection. Isaac moved his things from the barn to the spare room, and though they maintained separate sleeping quarters for propriety's sake, they were together every other moment. Sarah had never been courted properly before. The few men who had shown interest in Breckenridge had been put off by her independence and her determination to run the ranch alone. But Isaac seemed to admire those qualities in her, encouraged her to make her own decisions, respected her judgment. They worked side by side during the day, and in the evenings they would sit on the porch and talk as the sun set behind the mountains. Isaac taught her to shoot better, patiently correcting her aim until she could hit a target at 50 yards. She taught him her mother's recipes, and they cooked together in the small kitchen, laughing when he inevitably burned something or added too much salt. And slowly, carefully, they learned each other. Sarah discovered that Isaac hummed when he worked, old cowboy songs he had picked up on the trail. That he had a wry sense of humor that caught her off guard and made her laugh. That he was patient with animals but had little tolerance for human foolishness. That he read poetry when he thought no one was watching, and sometimes recited verses under his breath. Isaac learned that Sarah was tougher than she looked, could work as hard as any man and never complain. That she had a fierce loyalty to the few people she let into her circle. That she sang when she was happy and went quiet when she was sad. That she missed her father terribly and sometimes cried when she thought she was alone. One evening about a month after the shooting, they were sitting on the porch watching the stars come out when Sarah said, "Do you ever regret it, giving up drifting to stay here?" Isaac was quiet for a moment, then said, "No, I thought I might, but I do not. This place feels more like home than anywhere I have been since my father died. What would he think of you settling down? I think he would be glad." He always said I was too restless, that I needed to find something worth fighting for and then dig in. Isaac reached over and took her hand. I think I found it. Sarah smiled and squeezed his fingers. The ranch or me? Both. He pulled her closer until she was leaning against his shoulder. Definitely both. They were sitting like that when they heard horses on the road. Isaac was on his feet instantly, his hand going to the gun he now wore at all times. Sarah grabbed her rifle from inside the door, her heart racing. But when the riders came into view, she recognized Sheriff Brennan and 2 deputies. Brennan dismounted slowly, his expression grave. "Evening, Miss Owens. Walker, mind if we talk?" "What is wrong?" Sarah asked, fear clutching at her throat. "Marcus Mallory is dead," Brennan said bluntly. "Shot 3 times in the back behind the saloon this evening. His brothers are saying you 2 did it." Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. "That is insane. We have been here all day." "Can anyone verify that?" "Just each other," Isaac said quietly. "But we did not do this, Sheriff. We have got no reason to kill Marcus Mallory." "Revenge for him threatening Miss Owens seems like a pretty good reason," one of the deputies said. "Revenge for what?" Isaac asked. "He made threats, but nothing came of them. Why would we suddenly decide to kill him now, a month later?" Brennan held up his hand for silence. "I believe you. The timing does not make sense, and neither does the method. Someone shot Marcus in the back. That is not your style, Walker. If you wanted him dead, you would have faced him straight on." He sighed heavily. "But his brothers are stirring up trouble. They have got half the town believing you did it, and the other half is scared to say otherwise." "What do you want us to do?" Sarah asked. "Stay put for now. Do not go into town. I am going to investigate this properly, figure out who really killed Marcus. But I want you both to lay low until I sort it out." "Can you do that?" "We can," Isaac said. "But Sheriff, someone is trying to frame us. Someone who wants us gone or dead. Any idea who?" Brennan's expression was troubled. "I have got theories, but nothing I can prove yet. Just promise me you will stay here and stay safe." After he left, Sarah and Isaac went back inside and locked the doors. The warm glow of the evening had been shattered, replaced by cold dread. "Someone killed Marcus and tried to blame us," Sarah said. "But who and why?" "Maybe someone who wants your land," Isaac said. "Or someone who has a grudge against the Mallorys and saw an opportunity to get rid of them while framing us. Either way, we are in danger. Should we run?" "No. Running makes us look guilty. And besides, where would we go? You cannot just abandon your ranch." Isaac paced the small kitchen, thinking hard. "We need to find out who really killed Marcus, clear our names before the situation gets worse." "How do we do that stuck out here?" "We are not completely stuck. The sheriff said to stay put, not to hide. We can still talk to people, ask questions, gather information." He stopped pacing and looked at her. "But we have to be smart about it, and we have to be ready for trouble." The next few days were tense and watchful. They worked the ranch but kept their weapons close and their eyes on the road. No one came to visit except the Hendersons, who brought news from town. Cole and Finn Mallory were drinking heavily and making threats. Some of the townspeople believed Sarah and Isaac were innocent, but others were not so sure. The atmosphere in Breckenridge was ugly and getting uglier. Then, 4 days after Marcus's death, Sheriff Brennan returned. This time he came alone and his expression was grim. "I need to talk to you both." Inside, they gathered in the kitchen and Brennan pulled out his notebook. "I have been investigating Marcus's death and I have found some interesting things. First, he was shot with a .44 caliber pistol. Neither of you owns a gun like that." "That proves we did not do it," Sarah said with relief. "It helps. But here is where it gets complicated. The night Marcus died, he had been drinking at the saloon with a man named Dutch Grayson. You know that name, Walker?" Isaac's face went hard. "I know it. Grayson is a hired gun." Works for whoever pays him. Not a good man. That is what I figured. Turns out Grayson left town the morning after Marcus was killed, rode south in a hurry. I sent a telegram to some friends of mine, had them ask around. Grayson was hired by someone to kill Marcus and make it look like you two did it. Who hired him? Isaac asked. That is the part I have not figured out yet, but I have got a theory. Brennan leaned forward. Sarah, your ranch sits on 40 acres of decent grazing land with water rights to the creek. That makes it valuable, especially to someone who wants to expand. You ever get any offers to buy? A few, Sarah said. But I always said no. Who made the offers? Thomas Blackwell mostly. He owns the big spread east of here. But he seemed to accept my refusal. I have not heard from him in months. Brennan nodded slowly. Blackwell has been buying up small ranches all over this valley. Most people sell willingly, but a few have been pressured. Nothing I could prove, but the pattern is there. I think he hired Grayson to kill Marcus and frame you too. With you in jail or dead and Marcus out of the way, he could buy this land from whoever inherited it. The Mallorys were the biggest obstacle to his expansion plans, and you were vulnerable after Jake's death. That is elaborate, Isaac said. Why not just kill us directly? Because that would be too obvious. This way he gets rid of the Mallorys, gets rid of you, and gets the land. 3 birds with 1 stone. Brennan stood. I am going to confront Blackwell tomorrow, but I wanted to warn you first. If I am right about this, he might try something desperate when he realizes his plan failed. What should we do? Sarah asked. Stay alert. Keep your guns close. And if anyone comes around you do not know, do not take chances. He looked at Isaac. You have got good instincts, Walker. Trust them. That night Sarah and Isaac sat up late discussing what Brennan had told them. If Blackwell is behind this, he has money and men, Isaac said. He could hire more guns to come after us. So what do? We cannot just wait for him to attack. No, but we can be ready. Isaac stood and checked the rifle, then the pistol on his hip. Tomorrow I am going to ride the property, check all the approaches, make sure we do not have any weak spots. You should stay in the house. Keep the doors locked and the rifle loaded. I do not want to hide while you are out there exposed. I know, but we have to be smart about this. He came over and cupped her face in his hands. I cannot focus on watching for threats if I am worried about you getting hurt. Please, Sarah, let me do this. She wanted to argue, but she saw the fear in his eyes and realized it mirrored her own. All right, but you be careful. If anything happens to you, she could not finish the sentence. Nothing is going to happen to me, Isaac said firmly. I have survived worse than Thomas Blackwell, and I have got too much to live for now to take stupid risks. He kissed her softly. I love you. I should have said it before, but I was too stubborn and scared. But I love you, Sarah Owens. And I am going to make sure we both survive this so I can spend the rest of my life proving it. Tears filled Sarah's eyes. I love you too, so much it scares me. Then we are both scared together. He kissed her again, longer this time, pouring all his fear and love and determination into it. When they finally broke apart, Sarah felt steadier, stronger. Whatever was coming, they would face it together. The next morning, Isaac rode out early to check the property. Sarah watched him go with her heart in her throat, then forced herself to focus on her chores. She fed the chickens, collected eggs, made bread. Normal, everyday tasks that helped keep the fear at bay. She was just pulling the bread from the oven when she heard a horse approaching fast. Sarah grabbed her rifle and went to the window. It was Isaac, riding hard, and even from a distance she could see the tension in his body. He reined up at the porch and jumped down. We have got company coming. 4 riders, heavily armed, approaching from the east. They will be here in about 10 minutes. Blackwell's men. I would bet my life on it, and given the circumstances, I might have to. He checked his guns methodically. "Here is what we are going to do. You are going to go upstairs to the window that faces east. You are a good shot now, good enough to provide cover if things go wrong. I'm going to meet them outside, try to talk them down. But if shooting starts, you aim for horses first, men second. Understood? Isaac, I cannot let you face 4 armed men alone. You are not letting me do anything. This is my choice." His expression softened slightly. "I have been in tight situations before. I know how to handle myself, but I need you safe and positioned to help. Can you do that for me?" Sarah wanted to protest, wanted to insist they run or hide or do anything except face this head-on. But she saw the determination in Isaac's eyes and knew he was right. This was the only way. "I can do it." "Good." He kissed her hard and fast. "Whatever happens, I love you. Remember that." Then he was gone, striding out to the porch with his rifle in hand. Sarah raced upstairs and took up position at the window. From here, she had a clear view of the eastern approach and the yard below. She could see Isaac standing on the porch, relaxed but ready, the rifle held loosely in his hands. The 4 riders came into view, just as Isaac had said. They were rough-looking men, the kind who hired out their guns without asking questions. They reined up at the gate and the leader, a big man with a scar across his nose, called out, "Isaac Walker, we heard you were here." "You heard right," Isaac said calmly. "Now state your business or ride on." "Our business is with you and the woman. Mr. Blackwell wants you gone, off this land. He has made a generous offer to buy the place, but Miss Owens has refused. That was a mistake. Seems to me who Sarah sells to is her business, not yours. It became our business when Blackwell hired us to convince her otherwise." The scarred man smiled, showing yellow teeth. "We can do this easy or hard. Your choice. How about you just ride away and tell Blackwell to find land somewhere else?" Isaac suggested. "Seems easier all around." "Afraid we cannot do that. We have got a job to finish." "Then I guess we have got a problem." Isaac shifted his grip on the rifle almost imperceptibly. Sarah saw the scarred man's hand drop to his gun, saw the other 3 riders spreading out to flank Isaac. Her heart hammered against her ribs. "Last chance, Walker. You and the woman ride out, leave the land, and nobody gets hurt. And if we refuse, then we make you leave, one way or another." The silence that followed was thick with tension. Sarah's hands were sweating on the rifle stock. She forced herself to breathe slowly, to remember everything Isaac had taught her about shooting. Aim for center mass. Squeeze, do not pull. Follow through. Then everything happened at once. The scarred man went for his gun and Isaac moved faster than Sarah would have thought possible. His rifle came up and fired in one smooth motion, catching the scarred man in the shoulder and spinning him off his horse. The other 3 riders drew their weapons, and suddenly the yard erupted in gunfire. Sarah aimed at the nearest horse and fired. The animal reared and threw its rider, who hit the ground hard and did not get up. She worked the lever action and fired again, this time at a man who was taking aim at Isaac. Her shot went wide, but it made him duck, spoiling his aim. Below, Isaac had dropped his rifle and drawn his pistol. He fired twice in quick succession, hitting one of the remaining riders in the leg and forcing the other to take cover behind a water trough. Bullets splintered the porch railing and shattered the window below Sarah, but Isaac kept moving, kept shooting with a deadly calm precision. Sarah fired again, this time hitting the man behind the trough in the arm. He cried out and dropped his gun, clutching his wounded limb. The scarred leader had remounted despite his injured shoulder and was trying to bring his horse under control. Isaac shot him again, this time in the leg, and he fell from the saddle with a scream. Then, as quickly as it started, it was over. 3 of the 4 gunmen were wounded and on the ground. The fourth had wheeled his horse and was galloping back the way he came, apparently deciding survival was worth more than Blackwell's money. Isaac kept his gun trained on the 3 wounded men, breathing hard but steady. "Sarah," he called, "you all right?" "I am fine," she called back, though her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the rifle. "Come down, but bring your weapon. Keep it on these fellows while I tie them up." Sarah hurried downstairs, her legs feeling like water. The 3 wounded men were groaning and cursing, but none of them looked in danger of bleeding out. Isaac methodically disarmed them and bound their hands with rope from the barn, all while keeping his gun ready. When he was finished, he finally turned to Sarah and pulled her into a fierce embrace. "You did good," he said into her hair. "You saved my life. That second shooter would have gotten me if you had not made him duck." "I was terrified," Sarah admitted. "So was I, but we did it. We survived." He pulled back and looked at her face. "Are you really all right?" "I think so." She looked at the wounded men. "What do we do with them?" "Send for the sheriff. Let him deal with them. With any luck, they will testify against Blackwell and end this whole mess." He glanced toward the east, though the one who got away might cause problems. They did not have to wait long to find out. Within an hour, Sheriff Brennan arrived with 3 deputies, drawn by reports of gunfire from a passing rancher. He took one look at the scene and let out a low whistle. "Looks like you two had quite a morning." "Blackwell sent them," Isaac said. "4 hired guns to run us off the land. We have got 3 of them here, all willing to testify if it means a lighter sentence." Brennan questioned the wounded men, and sure enough, they confirmed they had been hired by Thomas Blackwell to force Sarah off her land by any means necessary. Faced with attempted murder charges, they sang like canaries, giving details about Blackwell's plans and even confirming he had hired Dutch Grayson to kill Marcus Mallory. "That is enough for me to arrest Blackwell," Brennan said with satisfaction. "Finally got the evidence I need to bring him down." He looked at Sarah and Isaac. "You two have made yourselves some enemies, but you have also earned the respect of every honest person in this valley. Word of what you did here today is going to spread fast." "I just want it to be over," Sarah said wearily. "I want to live in peace." "You will," Brennan promised. "Give me a few days to clean up this mess. Blackwell will hang for murder and his men will scatter. The Mallory brothers will probably leave town once they realize they were being used. You will have your peace." He was right. Within a week, Thomas Blackwell was arrested and charged with murder and conspiracy. The evidence against him was overwhelming, and he confessed rather than face a trial. Dutch Grayson was tracked down in New Mexico and brought back to face justice. Cole and Finn Mallory, realizing they had been manipulated and that their brother had died as part of Blackwell's scheme, left Colorado for Texas and were never heard from again. Sarah and Isaac were cleared of all suspicion, and the ranch was finally, truly theirs. The townspeople of Breckenridge, who had been divided and suspicious, rallied around them. The Hendersons threw a barbecue to celebrate, and half the valley showed up to welcome Sarah and Isaac as established members of the community. But the best moment came a month later, on a crisp October evening. Sarah and Isaac were sitting on the porch watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and purple. They had been working all day bringing in the last of the hay, and they were both pleasantly tired. "I have been thinking," Isaac said, breaking the comfortable silence. "About what? About us. About the future." He turned to face her, his expression serious but warm. "When I first came here, I told you I did not stay in one place, that I was not built for settling down. But you have proved me wrong about that, along with a lot of other things. I cannot imagine being anywhere but here, with you." Sarah's heart began to race. "What are you saying?" "I am saying I love you." I am saying I want to spend the rest of my life with you, working this ranch, building something real and lasting. I am saying. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small ring. It was simple, a silver band with a small turquoise stone. I am saying marry me, Sarah Owens. Make me the luckiest man in Colorado. Tears blurred Sarah's vision. Yes, she said, her voice breaking. Yes, 1,000 times yes. Isaac slipped the ring on her finger and kissed her, and Sarah felt all the fear and uncertainty of the past months melting away. They had survived danger and violence. They had faced down hired guns and cleared their names. They had fought for their land and their future. And now that future was laid out before them, bright and full of promise. They were married on a cold December day in 1878, with Sheriff Brennan standing as witness and half of Breckenridge crowded into the small church. Sarah wore a dress she had made herself from blue calico, and Isaac wore his best clothes with his father's pocket watch as a tie pin. When they exchanged vows, Sarah saw tears in Isaac's eyes and knew he was thinking about his father, wishing the old ranger could be there to see his son finally find peace and happiness. The first winter was hard, as all winters in the mountains were hard, but they faced it together. They spent long evenings by the fire, reading and talking and planning for spring. Isaac proved to be an excellent rancher, with a knack for breeding cattle and managing land. Sarah handled the finances and dealt with buyers, and together they slowly built the ranch into a profitable operation. In the spring of 1879, Sarah discovered she was pregnant. Isaac was beside himself with joy and anxiety in equal measure, fussing over her like a mother hen until she finally told him to stop. Women have been having babies since the beginning of time, she reminded him. I am going to be fine. I know, but you are my wife. I am allowed to worry. Their son was born in October of that year, a healthy boy with his father's blue eyes and his mother's dark hair. They named him Daniel after Isaac's father, and from the moment Isaac held his son for the first time, Sarah saw a change come over him. The haunted look that had sometimes shadowed his eyes disappeared, replaced by pure, uncomplicated joy. Daniel was followed 2 years later by a daughter they named Elizabeth, then another son, James, 2 years after that. The little house grew crowded with children and noise and laughter, and Isaac added on 2 more rooms to accommodate their growing family. The ranch prospered, and they became one of the most successful operations in the valley. But it was not just about the success or the land. It was about what they had built together. A life based on trust and love and hard work. A family forged in the crucible of violence and danger, but sustained by gentleness and grace. Isaac proved to be a devoted father, teaching his sons to ride and shoot and care for the land, teaching his daughter that she could do anything her brothers could do. Sarah ran the household with quiet efficiency, and between them they created a home that was welcoming to everyone who entered. The Hendersons became like family, their children growing up alongside Sarah and Isaac's. Sheriff Brennan became Uncle Tom to the kids, stopping by regularly to share dinner and stories. Other families moved into the valley, and Sarah and Isaac welcomed them, helped them get established, created a community that looked out for one another. Years passed in the rhythm of seasons. Springs filled with calving and planting, summers with haying and tending stock, autumns with harvest and preparation for winter. The children grew, and the ranch grew with them. Daniel proved to have his father's way with horses, and eventually started a breeding program that became famous throughout Colorado. Elizabeth turned out to have a head for numbers, and took over managing the ranch finances when she was just 16. James, the youngest, was a dreamer who loved books and eventually went east to college, though he always came home for summers. Through it all, Sarah and Isaac remained devoted to each other. Oh, they had their disagreements like any couple. Sarah thought Isaac was too protective of the children, especially Elizabeth. Isaac thought Sarah worked too hard and did not take enough time to rest. But these were minor squabbles, quickly resolved. The core of their relationship remained strong and true. On their 10th anniversary, Isaac surprised Sarah by taking her on a trip to Denver. It was the first time either of them had left the ranch for more than a day in years, and it felt strange and exciting to be away. They stayed in a real hotel, ate in restaurants, saw a play. It was wonderful, but after 3 days they both admitted they were homesick for the ranch and the children and the mountains. "I never thought I would be the kind of man who could not wait to get home," Isaac said on the train ride back. "I spent so many years running, never having a place I belonged. Now I've got you and the kids and the ranch, and I cannot imagine being anywhere else." "You were always that kind of man," Sarah said, leaning against his shoulder. "You just needed to find the right place to land." "I found the right person," Isaac corrected. "The place came with you." On their 20th anniversary, their children threw them a party that brought together everyone in the valley. There was music and dancing and a feast that lasted hours. Sarah looked around at the life they had built, at the friends they had made, at the children they had raised, and felt a contentment so deep it brought tears to her eyes. Isaac found her sitting on the porch as the party wound down, watching the sunset. "You all right?" he asked, settling beside her. "I am perfect," Sarah said. "I was just thinking about that night 20 years ago, when 3 men came looking for me and you stood on this porch and cocked your rifle. I was so scared, so certain I was going to die. And then you appeared out of nowhere and saved my life." "You saved mine too," Isaac said. "I was just drifting, half alive. You gave me a reason to stop, a reason to stay, a reason to be the man my father raised me to be." "We saved each other," Sarah said, taking his hand. "And we built something beautiful together." "We did," Isaac agreed. He pulled her close and kissed her temple. "Best decision I ever made, staying here with you." They sat together as the sun sank behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. In the house behind them, they could hear their children laughing with friends, could smell the remnants of the feast, could feel the warmth of community and family that had taken 20 years to build, but would last generations. Sarah thought about the frightened girl she had been that night, alone and desperate, thinking she had no future. She thought about the lost, haunted man Isaac had been, running from his past and from the possibility of love. And she marveled at how life could change so completely, how love could transform everything. As darkness fell and the stars came out, they remained on the porch, content in each other's presence. They had weathered storms and danger, had built a life from nothing, had raised children and created a legacy. They had kept each other safe through violence and peace, through hardship and prosperity, through every season the Colorado mountains threw at them. And they would continue to do so, for all the years they had left. Because that was what love meant in the Wild West, in the hard land where only the strong and the lucky survived. It meant standing together against whatever came. It meant facing down danger with a rifle in your hands and your partner at your side. It meant building something lasting in a place where everything was temporary and uncertain. It meant coming home, every single day, to the person who made home worth having. As the night deepened and the party finally ended, Sarah and Isaac went inside to their bedroom, the same room they had shared for 20 years. They undressed in comfortable silence, climbed into bed, and held each other close the way they had every night since they married. "I love you," Isaac whispered in the darkness. "I love you too," Sarah replied. "Always and forever." And that simple exchange, repeated countless times over 2 decades, was the foundation of everything they had built. 2 words that meant protection and partnership, passion and peace, present and future, all rolled into one. Outside, the Colorado wind whispered through the pines and the creek burbled its eternal song. Inside, Sarah and Isaac Walker slept in each other's arms, secure in the knowledge that whatever tomorrow brought, they would face it together. Just as they always had, just as they always would. The ranch continued to thrive as the years rolled on. By the time Sarah and Isaac reached their 30th anniversary, they had 7 grandchildren with more on the way. Daniel had married a schoolteacher from Denver, and they were raising their family in a new house. Isaac had helped build on the northern section of the property. Elizabeth had married a young lawyer, and they split their time between Breckenridge and Denver. Though Elizabeth still managed the ranch finances and refused to give up that responsibility. James had returned from college with a wife and a degree in veterinary medicine, and he had set up practice in town while living in a small cottage on the ranch. The original 40 acres had expanded to nearly 200 through careful purchases and strategic trading. The Walker Ranch was now one of the premier cattle operations in Colorado, known for quality stock and fair dealing. But Sarah and Isaac had never lost sight of what mattered most. They employed local people at fair wages, helped neighbors in need, and maintained the reputation for honesty that Isaac's father had valued above all else. In the spring of 1909, Isaac turned 53. He was still lean and strong, though his hair had gone silver and the scar on his face had deepened with age. He could still outwork men half his age, could still handle a horse with effortless grace, could still shoot straighter than anyone in the valley. But he had finally learned to slow down, to enjoy quiet moments, to let the younger generation take on more responsibility. Sarah, at 51, remained the heart of the family. Her dark hair was threaded with gray now, and fine lines marked her eyes and mouth. But to Isaac she was as beautiful as the day he first saw her in her kitchen with a rifle in her hands. She moved through life with quiet confidence, beloved by her children and grandchildren, respected throughout the territory. She had proven all those men wrong who said a woman could not run a ranch. She had done it, and done it well, and paved the way for other women to follow. One evening that spring, they took a ride up into the high country the way they used to when they were young. They rode side by side, content in silence, until they reached a meadow filled with wildflowers. There they dismounted and sat on a fallen log, watching the sun sink toward the western peaks. "You remember the first time we came up here?" Sarah asked. "It was summer and Daniel was just a baby. Elizabeth was not even born yet." "I remember," Isaac said. "You were worried about leaving him with your neighbor, kept fretting that something would happen. I had to convince you he would be fine." "He was fine. They were all fine. I worried too much when they were little. You were a good mother, are a good mother. They all turned out well because of you." "Because of us," Sarah corrected. "You were the one who taught them about integrity and courage, about standing up for what is right even when it is hard. Those are your father's lessons passed down through you to our children." Isaac was quiet for a moment, thinking about the old ranger who had shaped his life in ways he was still discovering. "I wish he could have met them, met you. He would have loved you. I wish I could have known him too. But his legacy lives on in you, in our children, in the values we have instilled in our grandchildren. That matters, Isaac. That is immortality of a sort." They sat in comfortable silence as the light faded and the first stars appeared. A cool breeze swept down from the mountains, carrying the scent of pine and snow. Somewhere a coyote called and another answered. The eternal sounds of the Wild West, the soundtrack to their life together. "I have been thinking," Isaac said eventually, "about retiring, turning the ranch over to Daniel and James, letting them run things." Sarah turned to look at him in surprise. "You would really step back?" "Not completely. I will always help out, always be involved, but they are ready to take over and I am ready to spend more time with you. We have worked hard for 30 years. We have built something that will last long after we are gone. Maybe it is time to slow down, enjoy what we have earned." "What would we do with all that free time?" Isaac smiled. "Travel maybe. Visit Elizabeth in Denver. See something of the world beyond these mountains. Spend time with the grandchildren. Whatever you want, Sarah. Whatever makes you happy." Sarah leaned against him and he wrapped his arm around her shoulders. "You make me happy, you always have. Everything else is just details. Even so, I want to give you the world, or at least a small piece of it." "You already have," Sarah said softly. "The day you stood on that porch with a rifle and protected me from the Mallorys, you gave me my world. Everything since then has been a gift." They rode back to the ranch as full darkness fell, guided by starlight and the certain knowledge of every rock and turn in the trail. When they reached the barn, Daniel was there to take their horses, and they could hear the grandchildren playing in the yard. Life continued, generation after generation, each one building on what came before. That night, lying in bed with Isaac's arms around her, Sarah thought about all the years that had passed, all the joys and sorrows and ordinary moments that made up a life. She thought about the girl she had been, terrified and alone, thinking she had no future. She thought about the man Isaac had been, lost and searching for purpose, and she marveled at how two broken people had found each other in the darkness and built something whole and good together. "Isaac," she whispered. Thank you." "For what?" "For staying, for loving me, for building this life with me." He kissed the top of her head. "Thank you for giving me a reason to stay, a reason to love, a reason to build. You saved me, Sarah, in every way a person can be saved." "We saved each other," she said again, because it was true, because it was important he understood that. That is what love does. It saves us from ourselves, from our fears, from our loneliness. It makes us better than we could ever be alone. Then I am grateful every day for that love. For you. For all of this. They fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms, the way they had thousands of nights before, secure in the bond they had forged through trial and triumph. And when morning came, they woke together to face another day, another season, another year of the life they had chosen and the love they had nurtured. The years continued to pass, each one bringing changes both small and large. Isaac and Sarah did eventually step back from the day-to-day operations of the ranch, though they remained active and involved. They traveled to Denver and stayed with Elizabeth, marveling at how much the city had grown. They took a train all the way to San Francisco and saw the Pacific Ocean for the first time, holding hands like young lovers as they watched the waves crash against the shore. But they always came home to Colorado, to the mountains they loved, to the ranch that had been the foundation of their life together. Home to the porch where Isaac had stood with a rifle 30 years before and changed both their lives forever. They celebrated their 40th anniversary surrounded by 3 generations of family. The house was bursting with children and grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren. There was music and food and stories told and retold until they had become legend. The tale of how Isaac and Sarah met, how they fought off the Mallorys and Blackwells' hired guns, how they built a successful ranch from nothing. The younger children listened with wide eyes, not quite believing their gentle grandparents had once been so bold and fierce. But Sarah and Isaac remembered. They remembered every moment of fear and courage, every battle fought and won, every choice that brought them to this place. And they were grateful for all of it, even the hard parts, because it had led them here, to this moment of love and family and legacy. As the party wound down and guests departed, Sarah and Isaac found themselves alone on the porch once more. It had become their favorite spot, the place where they had first stood together against darkness, and now the place where they sat together in peace. 40 years, Sarah said wonderingly. It does not feel like that much time has passed. It does to my knees, Isaac joked, though his eyes were serious. But you are right. The years have flown by. Every day with you has been a gift, Sarah, even the hard days, especially the hard days because we face them together. We have had a good life, Sarah said, better than I ever imagined possible that night when I thought I was going to die. We have had an extraordinary life, Isaac corrected, and it is not over yet. We have got more years ahead of us, more memories to make, more love to share. He was right about that. They had 10 more years together, years filled with watching grandchildren grow and great-grandchildren be born, with watching the ranch continue to prosper under Daniel and James's management, with enjoying the fruits of all their hard work and sacrifice. Isaac passed first, in his sleep on a cold January night in 1919. He was 63 years old and had been feeling poorly for a few weeks, though he refused to slow down. Sarah woke that morning to find him still and peaceful beside her, a slight smile on his face as if he had seen something wonderful in his dreams. The grief nearly destroyed her. After 40 years of partnership, of facing every challenge together, she felt lost without him. But she was surrounded by love, by children and grandchildren who rallied around her, who reminded her that Isaac lived on in all of them. And slowly, painfully, she learned to carry on. She lived another 15 years, long enough to see the ranch continue to thrive, long enough to hold her great-great-grandchildren, long enough to know that everything she and Isaac had built would endure. She filled her days with family and friends, with the land she loved, with memories of the man who had given her everything. When Sarah Owens Walker finally passed in 1934 at the age of 76, she was surrounded by family in the bedroom she had shared with Isaac for over 40 years. Her last words were, "I am coming, my love," and her last breath was a smile. They buried her next to Isaac on a hill overlooking the ranch, where they could watch over the land they had loved and the family they had created. The entire valley turned out for the funeral. 3 generations of people whose lives had been touched by Sarah and Isaac's kindness, integrity, and love. And as the years continued to roll by, as the 20th century brought changes no one could have imagined in 1878, the story of Sarah and Isaac endured. It became part of the folklore of Breckenridge, told and retold with each generation. The story of 3 men who came looking for a woman after midnight, and the cowboy who stood on the porch and cocked his rifle. The story of 2 broken souls who found each other in darkness and built a life filled with light. The story of love that conquered fear, of courage that stood against injustice, of partnership that weathered every storm. The Walker Ranch remained in the family for generations, each one honoring the legacy Sarah and Isaac created. The original house was preserved and eventually turned into a small museum, with the porch where Isaac made his stand marked with a bronze plaque. Tourists came from all over to see it, to hear the story, to understand what love and courage looked like in the Old West. But the real legacy was not in buildings or land or even stories. It was in the values passed down through the generations: integrity, courage, compassion, the belief that one person could make a difference, that standing up for what was right mattered, that love was worth fighting for. These were the lessons Sarah and Isaac taught their children, who taught their children, who taught theirs. And so, in a very real way, Sarah and Isaac Walker never truly died. They lived on in every act of courage their descendants performed, in every gesture of kindness, in every relationship built on mutual respect and love. They lived on in the land they had loved and protected, in the community they had helped build, in the legacy of a life well lived and a love story for the ages. On quiet evenings, when the wind whispered through the pines and the stars came out over the Colorado mountains, people swore they could sometimes see two figures on the porch of the old Walker house. A man and a woman standing close together, looking out over the land, keeping watch the way they had in life, protecting and cherishing what they had built together. It was just a legend, of course, a romantic notion with no basis in fact. But legends have a way of capturing truth, and this one captured the essence of Sarah and Isaac perfectly. Two souls bound together by love and circumstance, by danger and devotion, by a single moment when everything could have gone wrong, but instead went beautifully, miraculously right. That moment when three men came looking for her after midnight, and a cowboy stood on the porch and cocked his rifle. That moment when fear turned to courage, when loneliness turned to love, when two separate lives became one shared journey. That was the moment everything changed. That was the moment their story truly began, and what a story it was. A story of the Wild West, of hard land and harder choices, of violence and peace, of loss and redemption. But most of all, a story of love. Real, enduring, transformative love that conquered everything put in its path and emerged stronger on the other side. The kind of love that built families and communities and legacies. The kind of love that made the world a little bit better simply by existing. The kind of love that proved, beyond any doubt, that even in the darkest moments, hope and happiness were possible. Sarah and Isaac's love was all of that and more. It was a beacon for everyone who knew them, a model for what partnership could be, a testament to the power of two people choosing each other every single day for 40 years. And it continued to inspire long after they were gone, because stories like theirs never truly end. They just change form, passed down through generations, adapted and embellished but always retaining their essential truth. That love saves us. That courage matters. That standing together against the darkness is the only way to survive. That home is not a place but a person, and finding that person is worth any struggle, any sacrifice, any risk. These were the lessons of Sarah and Isaac Walker. These were the gifts they left behind. And these were the reasons their story would be told for as long as people gathered around fires and shared tales of the Old West, when men were bold and women were brave and love conquered all. The sun set behind the mountains one more time, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. On the hill where Sarah and Isaac rested together, wildflowers bloomed in profusion, fed by the mountain streams and warmed by the Colorado sun. And somewhere in the gathering dusk, if you listened carefully, you could almost hear the echo of their voices, laughing together, planning together, living together in the way they always had and always would, bound by a love that death itself could not diminish. That was their legacy. That was their gift. That was the story of Sarah and Isaac Walker, two souls who found each other in the darkness and created light that would shine for generations. And it all began on a single night, with three men riding up a canyon road with violence in their hearts, and one cowboy standing on a porch with a rifle in his hands and love giving him the courage to face any odds. It was a good story, a true story. And above all, a love story, the best kind of story there is. The kind that reminds us all what is possible when we choose courage over fear, when we choose love over loneliness, when we choose to stand firm in defense of what and who we cherish. Sarah and Isaac chose all of those things, and in doing so they created something that would last forever. And that, in the end, was all anyone could hope for. A love worth fighting for, a life worth living, a legacy worth leaving. Sarah and Isaac had all three, and in having them, they gave the world a gift that would never stop giving. The gift of their story, their love, their example. The gift of hope in a hard land, of light in the darkness, of two hearts beating as one through every trial and triumph. The stars came out over Breckenridge, Colorado, the same stars that had watched over Sarah and Isaac through 40 years of marriage, through their whole lives really. The same stars that had witnessed that fateful night when everything changed. The same stars that would watch over their descendants for generations to come. Eternal and unchanging, like the love that had bound Sarah and Isaac together. Like the legacy they created. Like the story that would never end as long as there were people to tell it and hearts to be moved by it. The story of three men who came looking for a woman after midnight, and the cowboy who stood on the porch and cocked his rifle, and the love that saved them both.